most compelling and convincing political agenda that candidates can run on. And lastly, we've organized across the country, growing from just 20 hubs to 200 in just a mere amount of months. And I'm here today with my Iowa Sunrise Movement, and you guys are doing the hard work on the ground. You are making sure that every young person out here in Iowa is going to be showing up in force in the elections, voting on the Green New Deal. And can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think a year ago today I could have seen youth and politicians working together to put forward a solution that really addresses the climate crisis at the scale that science and justice demand. And so Bernie and AOC and Senator Markey and a growing alliance of politicians are doing so. And Bernie has put forth the most ambitious climate plan that we've seen. So thank you so much for having me here, and I'm really excited to talk with all you panelists.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Cherie Mortiz. I'm a retired school teacher, live in Des Moines, lived in Iowa my entire life. After 40 years of teaching, I really didn't know what I was going to do with my retirement years. However, I had this hope in the back of my head and in my heart that I could find an avenue that was resilient and strong and ready to take on business as usual. I was absolutely exhausted and fed up by the current system that I had tried to support, that I had tried to be active in, and it left me cold. So I went and they did this interesting overview, and they seemed to be very knowledgeable. They'd seemed to have done a lot of research. And they said to me, because I was new, sure, you want to go with us? We're going to go out to the Wells Fargo mortgage headquarters out in West Des Moines. And I said, well, then what are you going to do? And they said, we're going to occupy their lobby and protest. And I said, I'm all in. I had no idea what that meant or what we would do. We drove out. They threw open the trunk lids, and out came signs. The CEO at that time out there managing the mortgage headquarters, his name was Michael Hyde. And I got the best sign of all. It said, Hyde can't hide. So we went in there and we protested and we chanted. And I said, well, how long do we do this? And she said, well, we don't leave till the police come. It's not a party until they come. And I said, really? And then I thought, hell yes! So that's how I got my start. Once I got involved in the organization, it just got better and better, because you know what? IOCCI is full of truth tellers, unafraid to take on corporate self-interest and corporate power. We provide a lot of training and understanding of the political landscape. And before I knew it, I was getting this incredible amount of training, and I began to take all of that angst, all of that frustration and exhaustion, and here I am today being embraced with my people. I want to thank you all for being here, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. All right. Want to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, everybody. Pleased to be here. All my life, I've been an independent, sustainable family farmer. About 25 years ago, I realized, you know what, it's time to fight for our culture and our way of life. Against industrial ag, against the government, which has been bought basically by big money, big industrial ag. I am past president of the Iowa Farmers Union. I'm still on the board. I am on the board of the organization Comparative Markets, a national group. I am on boards and commissions across the country, across the state. I fight and raise hell for family farm agriculture and for the food you people want to eat. And I have a message for Mr. Trump at the moment. Put your thought where your mouth is. Make America great again. Country of origin labeling for meat by America's farmers and ranchers. Why doesn't he do it? All the Democrats, including Sanders, willing to do it. It's all about country. Should be. And people, exactly. And Iowa has transformed from a family farm system to an industrial ag system. In the meantime, we have some of the worst water quality in the nation. We have extreme depopulation in the rural areas. We have excessive use of antibiotics in animal agriculture. 94% of the people like farmers like me, independent pig farmers, we're gone. You drive in the countryside, you smell them, the big CAFOs, the factory farms. 90% of the meat you buy in the grocery store comes from a factory farm now. Is that what America wants? We, the family farm system of agriculture, were good enough to feed this country for over 200 years. Why do you think they want to get rid of us now? It's all about big money, folks. We need your help to, quite frankly, raise hell to save the family farm, the consumer. I bleed rural and farm, family farm. I bleed for the working people and the consumers. Us family farmers, yep, we take the subsidies. Us little guys in mid-sized family farms, we just go get another job in town. That's how we subsidize ourselves to stay on the farm. So we're going to do it this time. We're going to make a president out of Senator Sanders. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Ross Gruters. I'm a member of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. I'm also co-chair of Railroad Workers United, a cross-craft organization of railroad workers and their allies. And I serve on the city council of the Des Moines suburb of Pleasant Hill. As a railroad engineer, I know all too well the potential we're leaving on the table with our nation's railroad system. You've heard a lot about passenger trains and high-speed rail zipping across the country from politicians and advocates. But that's just a fraction of the untapped potential in our nation. The real promise of rail, the ambitious promise of rail, the promise that Bernie Sanders will deliver with his Green New Deal plan, is a fully electrified, high-capacity freight and passenger system in our country. It's a Swiss Army approach. It does so many things like slashing carbon emissions, creating a jobs boom, putting forth communities that have been exploited by fossil fuel and ensuring that they are lifted up. Revitalizing our rural communities and creating an alliance between working people and environmentalists. I like to think of it as a steel interstate, moving not just our passengers and freight, but also acting as a conduit for the energy that we will produce under a Green New Deal plan. But it's not going to happen on its own. It's going to happen because we're supporting candidates for office like Senator Sanders and Representative Ocasio-Cortez. It's going to happen because we put hundreds more people in office who support this vision. And it's going to happen because the people in this room are going to grow our movement from thousands to millions so that we can achieve this vision.
All right. So I told you folks we have some pretty impressive panelists. So I'm going to start asking some questions now. And Molly, I want to start with you because I watched the video that you referenced in your opening remarks just last night, and I was compelled by it. It was very well done. And so your work is inspiring and educational. What role do you see artists playing in this movement to educate other folks about the climate crisis and the opportunities that are there?
At this moment, what we're facing is a battle of stories. The story that we're being told is that this is the best we can hope for, that we just have to get used to how things are with wildfires burning people's homes in California, with our grandparents in Puerto Rico dying because there's no electricity to power the hospitals that they're in, with droughts and with pinched circumstances. We're being force-fed dystopia and told that we have to be content. Now, artists are storytellers. And we also have a story that we can contribute to the fight for the Green New Deal, the fight that Senator Sanders is the only candidate truly equipped to make. And that's, we can show people what we are fighting for. We can say, no, we deserve better than this. We deserve better than a world where each year the environment gets worse and worse, and we get poorer and poorer. More people are forced to leave their homes, and these migration waves turn people against each other. We can say, no, there is a better way, that we deserve better, that we can create a better and more beautiful world. For me, what art can do for the Green New Deal is it can present that vision of the future.
Thank you for that. Dr. Ticky, I'll go to you next. Everybody here knows that it's important to get to 100% clean power in the next decade or as quickly as we can. But Iowa is an agricultural state, and agriculture is responsible for 9% of all U.S. carbon emissions. What needs to happen for farming communities to adopt the regenerative soil practices that you're working with, and how are we going to get that number down?
Well, first, we need to understand where we came from. We've lost about 60% of our organic carbon in Iowa since we started farming. And worldwide, that's about average. And so we've been deficit spending our ecological capital. Organic matter is about 58% carbon. So what we need to do is start putting carbon in, but we are going the wrong direction. Today's industrial agriculture is still continuing to spew out carbon. If you look around Iowa, now that the crops are coming out, you'll see that it'll be bare all winter. What we need to have is living roots in the soil year-round. We need to have living crops on the land all year round, and that will start to sequester carbon in the soil again. And farmers are doing it. Some farmers are doubling their soil carbon. And if you extrapolate that, we could, if we can increase our soil carbon by 1% to 2% worldwide, we could sequester all the carbon, taking us from 415 parts per million in the atmosphere down to 350 million. But that is a huge order. We need to turn the whole boat around here. We're going in the wrong direction. So we really need some radical change, and I think Bernie Sanders is the one who can do it. Because we can't be fiddling around the margins. We're not going to get anywhere by going in the status quo, the centrist position, and just trying to change a few things. We have to have a fundamental change. And it's going to take policy change. It's going to take research change. Even, we wonder sometimes, well, if Bernie Sanders gets elected, can we change Congress enough to make it happen? But even within the administration, there's a lot that can be done. At USDA, there's a $2 billion research budget every year. Most of that supports industrial agriculture. We turn that around and start supporting regenerative kind of farming. We can turn that all around. The same with conservation. We can do that in the energy department. All those departments, they can do a lot of change just without congressional action, just undoing a lot of what Trump has done. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to come back down to Cherie. One of the panelists mentioned CAFOs, and I think everybody here is probably well acquainted to what those are. But as I understand, there were about 700 CAFOs back in 2001, and now there are more than 10,000 CAFOs in Iowa. What impact does this expansion have on our ecosystem, on our environment?
That is a great, great question. And just before I answer that, I do want to just do a quick shout out. Iowa CCI staff and peeps are out there, and we've got some forms, some petitions for you to sign, and to sign up and join up with us to take on business as usual, corporate ag, corporate banking. Clean water is a huge issue for us. So they're wearing the baseball tees in black and white. Get your hands up there. There's Jack. There's Sebastian. There's Ross. So please do that for us. Okay, back to this important question. The fact of the matter is that we have had an unprecedented explosion in factory farms, in confined animal feeding operations. The impact of that just on our natural resources, our soil, our water, and our air quality has been really devastating. We have in the state of Iowa 750 polluted water bodies right now. We have asked the Iowa DNR for the new report on impaired waterways, and guess what? Have we gotten it? No. We asked for it 6 months ago. Did we get it? No. We asked for it a couple months later. Did we get it? No. We asked for it a month ago. Did we get it? No. But we're not going away. We have a right to that information because you know what? You just have to assume, has the number of impaired waterways gotten better? No. Probably gotten a whole lot worse. So, we're all sort of victims of this. The problem that we have really with the impaired waterways in the state of Iowa is many of our public waterways can't even be used for their intended purpose. I think it's always a risk if you decide to swim or fish or water ski or whatever. And it's really disappointing when you go to a state park like I did with my family. We had 3 teenagers with us, and they all jump out of the car. Of course, the first thing they want to do is go to the beach. And out of my peripheral vision, I see a sign, beware of possible high bacteria levels. And I have to yell, wait a minute. Do you know what it's like to live for a long weekend with pissed off teenagers?
That ain't right.
Well, the impact of these CAFOs is that they have more manure than they can manage. And so we are having extremes in temperature here in Iowa, like everywhere else. So we go from drought and heat to torrential rain and flooding. And when you are dumping manure, and sometimes double dumping on the same field, and you have soil that no longer has the capacity to absorb that because it's been stripped over and over again, we have tremendous runoff into our rivers, lakes, and streams. Many of these water bodies we rely on for our drinking water. So in Des Moines, we rely on the Raccoon and the Des Moines River. And it used to be that if one was polluted, we could draw from the other. They're both polluted now. And so Des Moines Water Works was forced to build, just a few years ago, the largest nitrate filtering system in the world. You show me another place on the planet that has more intensive pig production and environmental degradation. And guess who pays for that? We do. They pass those costs on to us. We didn't dump it, we didn't drink it, and we're not going to stop until they clean it up. Now, in this, we have seen our summers be pretty brutal. So on average, we're averaging 5 days of extreme heat. The projection is that is going to change by the year 2050 to 40 days of extreme heat. What that does to us also does to livestock. So we have over 10,000 confined animal pig sites. And these are massive industrial-sized buildings. And these pigs sit in there and they stand and they drink and they eat all day. There's no recreation program director for them. They get very fat very quick, and that's what the farmers want. Because the less they have to feed them, the bigger their profit margin is. And so, these buildings get hot. So this is pig production on an industrial level, huge buildings, and they have huge industrial-sized fans. And they exhaust that air out to keep it circulating. And also the air is so toxic, it would literally kill the pigs if they didn't. Because those pigs are standing above a manure pit, and that manure is percolating into one toxic brew. So they're certainly going to ensure their profit margin and these pigs, but they don't hesitate to exhaust massive amounts of polluted air out into our communities and neighborhoods. In the state of Iowa, if you were to take a map of the most number of concentrated areas of CAFOs and overlap that with a map that shows the hot zones, the red zones in the state of Iowa, they're almost identical. So tell me who is contributing to our air pollution.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for that. So I want to get Michelle in here to ask a question. We'll go Michelle, we'll get to Chris, Ross, and then Zena. You can close this out. But Michelle, you were, as you mentioned, a protege of the late Dr. Frank Lemire, and you've been involved in a lot of direct action activism. Can you tell us about how you've built momentum in the Native American community, the indigenous communities, for some of these fights, and share some of the lessons for how activists can broaden their coalitions without losing focus on their specific goals?
So just a recap of what White Clay is, because I'm going to assume a lot of people didn't know. White Clay was a town created in 1905 by President Roosevelt as a border town to border South Dakota and Nebraska. Historically, treaties say all reservations has to be dry and no liquor stores can be within 50 miles. White Clay was only a mile apart from the Pine Ridge Ogallala Reservation. And for over 100 years, they only had 15 residents, but 4 off-sale liquor stores. And they sold millions each year, creating murders and sex trafficking. There was no law in this town. Towards the end, like every baby that was born on Pine Ridge 1 out of 4 babies had fetal alcohol syndrome. And so Dr. Frank Lemire took this on over 20 years ago. He stood at the borderline in protest and got arrested. And then he came to us youth to ask for his help. So thank you, youth, for being here, because I was a youth like you guys one time too. And when he came and asked us to help him, I stood with him all these years to help him shut down White Clay. And as the great Frank Lemire would say, there's more work to be done. So there is. So what I learned over these years with him is what we're battling here, we're battling against money. We're battling against money, but we, the people, can stand up to them. We can. We actually worked with people from the other party, Republicans, because we made it a humanistic issue. We made it a Nebraskan issue. This was liquid genocide. Nebraska shouldn't profit off of that. And we just lost Alan Jacob 2 months before Dr. Frank Lemire. And Alan Jacob was the former president of the Republican Party. And, there was just a handful of us White Clay fighters, right? So all these years, I never bothered to ask Alan what his affiliation was. He was always teasing me about being a Democrat, but I never asked him because I just seen him as a good human being trying to help us with our cause. And that's what you need to look at. We're all going to have differences. We're all going to have different beliefs and values and outlook. But it's the main thing is you want to keep the goal in mind. You know, we fight the Keystone Pipeline XL. We've been doing that for over 10 years. This is the third time it's up again. Our leader, Jane Klebb, has developed a relationship with the farmers and landowners to work with the Native Americans. You know how hard that is? Me being a Native American, I'm helping you. You know, that's my land, you know, but we have established that relationship because we know how important the water is. And we had established that relationship with environmentalists. So it can be done. We all work together to protect our most natural resources, the Ogallala Aquafilter. And here's another example of how we won. You here being today is helping. If you don't think you could run for office, then support someone who's running for office. Any way you can. We do that. The two major Democratic cities is Omaha and Lincoln. So we get together and we get people going and we run and we help and volunteer. And last year we got 3 Democrats on our county commission, Lancaster County Commission. And just this week, because we're battling the Costco chicken farms, they want to build 500 farms that are out of state polluting our water. And so the Lancaster County, where I'm from, they had a hearing. People from Raymond, the city of Raymond, that they want to build this farm out came up. And these farms can hold up to 47,000 chickens, right? And so the people protest and they said their words. And if it wasn't for us pushing and getting Democrats elected on these seats, we won. We won just that little area. We won and say no. And it was to the Democrats elected that we worked to get elected. So if you don't think, working on caucuses or working for a campaign doesn't work, it works. Like I said, it took Frank Lemire over 20 years to shut down White Clay. Right now with climate crisis, we need to move faster with this. It's an urgency. I like to say thank you to Bold, Iowa. They have worked with indigenous groups as Seed and Sovereignty. So they're a good, perfect example to lead from, to learn how. Because like I said, we have to be good to each other. Not all the time we're going to agree on everything, but we need to stay focused on the main cause. And we can win. So thank you for everyone for being here. Like I said, right now, I just want to one more thing is I just want to point how important it is for people to look what's going on in Nebraska. You guys are suffering what we're about to suffer. Our farmers and landowners went bankruptcy. They lost their lands during the flooding. Like I said, our governor did not help for almost 2 weeks. The mass media did not pick up on it for 2 weeks. And it was Nebraskans that helped each other. And other states helped each other. It was Nebraskans that helped the tribe that got flooded and send supplies. We helped each other out. So, but yeah, we got Pete Ricketts is a billionaire governor who wants to put money over people. And as an environmentalist, an activist, and as a Native, I need help because we're trying to put down all kinds of fires. And so if anybody can help me, any organized group want to help with us, we're more welcome to. And also, if anybody want to get a meeting with me with Leonardo DiCaprio and his foundation, I want to meet with Leonardo DiCaprio and his foundation to see if he can help us in Nebraska. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. So we're going to go Chris, Ross, and Zena. Chris, this one is for you. Michelle mentioned in her comments the number of farmers that have gone bankrupt. And here in Iowa, family farm bankruptcies under Chapter 12 have tripled in the past 3 years. And Iowa farmers hold more debt than farmers in the state of California. What would a Green New Deal mean for farming families who fear corporate agriculture's unfair advantages will drive them off the land they inherited before they can pass it down to their own kids?
Okay, I'll start with a direct answer to your question, and that being the Green New Deal is the best hope to save the family farm since the New Deal of the 30s. Now let's get a little more serious about this. The bankruptcies are rampant. going up are suicides. You know, the family farm, the farmer, the farm family, because it's a family. It's way past being a business. You know, our home is our farm. And on a daily basis, the stress level is high. You're fighting the weather. You're fighting the so-called markets. And we're fighting our very own government, which has been compromised and taken over by big-moneyed industrialized agriculture. This needs to be broke up. Farmers, why the bankruptcies? Can't get a profit. Actually, last month, as being a board member of Organization Competitive Markets, we threw a huge rally in Omaha, Nebraska. It's about, right now, the flavor is the cattle prices. And we titled the meeting, Stop the Stealing. Family farm ranchers right now are losing $200 per head per cow marketed. The packers, which own them for 2 to 3 days, are making $400 a head. The retailers are making hundreds of dollars. So again, the guy who owns them the longest and does all the hard work loses money and gets screwed. It's called the family farm. 20 years ago, in 1998, they done the same thing to the pig boys. I'm one of them. They dropped the hog prices to 8 cents a pound from 45 cents. You just start doing the math on trying to pay the bills. And at the very same time, we were taking $20 a hog. Iowa Beef Process, a packer, was selling 10-pound hams for 20 bucks. Now let's think about how the hell the family farm is going to survive. We need somebody like Senator Sanders who's going to stand up, stand out like a bunch of us advocates and advocacy people have done the last 25 years. And I have a message for Mr. Sonny Perdue, who thinks the family farm is going by the wayside and get bigger and get out. We're going to fight like hell for family farm agriculture. And we're going to have the help of the likes of Senator Sanders as being President of the United States, among many others.
All right.
Let's do it, people.
All right.
Let's do it.
Ross, I understand rail transportation creates 1/3 as much emissions as moving people and goods with cars and planes, and that's before we electrify the system and create that steel interstate that you talked about earlier. What would this railway revolution mean for communities around the country?
Thank you, Stacy. I want to start with, just by show of hands, how many folks in the audience put up your hand if your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents lived on and worked the land here in this country? Now, by show of hands, leave them up there. By show of hands, whose family is still on that land and still farming? That's incredible. That is what we're facing with the chronic depopulation of our rural communities in this state and around the Midwest. And that's exactly what Senator Sanders' Green New Deal plan aims to correct and reverse. Now, I'm not breaking any news to you folks when I share that railroads and energy utilities are regulated monopolies. Unfortunately, they're being regulated to the benefit of Wall Street investors and billionaires. So, to me, I need to ground this in where the idea came from. And we as grassroots railroad activists got together with environmentalists and had some railroad safety conferences around the country. And I saw communities like Richmond, California in the Bay Area, and what the damage was done to that community by the refinery town. I went to Chicago and I saw the coal ash mounds that rained down on poor Black and brown communities. And I saw the struggles that indigenous communities were going through when it came to fighting fossil fuel extraction on their indigenous lands. So what this revitalization looks like is millions of dollars in investments, $600 million in our rail system, another $500 million to electrify those right-of-ways so that we don't have to have the eminent domain fights, and that we can have the communities that are along our rail lines, communities in Iowa like Ottumwa, Creston, Clinton, Mason City, Fort Madison, Fort Dodge, Marshalltown. These small towns can be revitalized, reindustrialized, and we can create millions of jobs, hundreds of thousands of railroad jobs, but millions of jobs around the production and transmission of clean energy on these rail lines. And that's 3 times more efficient today, Stacy, that the railroad is in terms of carbon. If it's electrified, that improves. And if it's electrified, we can also electrify our trucking transportation fleet so that these things can complement each other going forward. If you like what you're hearing in this vision for rail, I want to again give a shout out to the Iowa CCI Action organizers. They've got petitions out there, and they've got these leaflets on solutionary rail and what that vision looks like. You can pick one of those up from them, and there's a QR code on there that you can learn more about what the vision for rail looks like. But in terms of people out there that are fighting for the Green New Deal, there's one person, and we're going to hear from him today, who is putting forth the most ambitious Green New Deal plan, and that's Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you, Ross. Okay, Zena, you were going to close us out with this question and your answer. The energy and conviction young people are bringing to this fight today is important, not only to growing momentum for the Green New Deal, but for also ensuring we deliver a just transition into the decade of the Green New Deal. So what does that justice look like? How can it transform our economy? And what role do young people play in this fight to save the planet?
Yeah, so I think the story there begins with 2 pivotal social movements, and that's the environmental justice movement and the labor movement. And they came together to put forward this principle of a just transition. And it said that we need to move our economy away from an extractive one to a regenerative one. And that's an economy that invests in the well-being of workers and in the health of the environment over the exploitation of people and the exploitation of the environment. And so this idea of a just transition is central to any Green New Deal that we're going to bring in. Because what it says is in transitioning to 100% renewable energy and averting the worst effects of climate catastrophe, we're also going to be bringing in a new era of justice and security and democracy to Americans. We're going to make sure that no worker is left behind in this just transition. And we're going to make sure, essentially, that we're establishing a new value system for how we govern America. And so the Green New Deal is this amazing opportunity to not only envision what our new economy looks like, but what those values look like. So think of family, think of justice, think of security, think of what freedom means. To me, freedom means to live a good life. And outside, there were some Trump supporters, they were yelling freedom at me, and I said, I guess we're on the same page because I want freedom to live. And so, if everyone here could close their eyes for a moment and stop what you're doing and just imagine what an economy that's based on relationships and care would look like. In Iowa, I think it might look like bringing economic control back into the hands of family farmers. I think it would look like investing in people who are on the front lines of the climate crisis and using their local knowledge to restore biodiversity. And most of all, I think it would look like creating meaningful and dignified work in service to the mission of repairing and caring for America. And so, right now, this is the first step in a just transition. Right here, all of us today are embodying the type of vision we want because we're listening to each other and we're imagining where imagination seems to have been lost. And so I'll close this out by saying that I personally think the greatest anomaly of the climate crisis is that we can become better people in how we decide to respond. We can become better family members, better neighbors, better people. And so going forward, I think that we just have to fight for imagination, and we have to not compromise for anything that once was conceived as politically impossible, because now it's politically inevitable.
All right. Thank you. Folks, let's hear it for our panel. Okay, so we are going to take a short break. I see we have oversold this room, so I ask that you do me a favor during this short break. If you need to get water, it looks like there's water and food over there along the side. Look around. If there is someone who looks like they could be benefited by sitting in a chair, and you have the ability to stand,